for understanding the principles of locomotion and the mechanisms which lie behind every movement that an organism is able to make, we need to understand the structure of a skeletal muscle in detail. Why only skeletal muscle? Because whatever movement is being brought about in human beings, that takes place, voluntary movement I am talking about, the voluntary movement would take place if there are skeletal muscles which are present for conducting that voluntary movement. Of course, the nervous system plays an important role, we are going to study that, but for now we need to understand the muscle structure, that is the skeletal muscle structure in detail. What is the functional unit of the skeletal muscle? How does it work? What would be the theory behind the working of that muscle? So first of all, we need to understand what are muscle bundles. The scope of this particular topic that we are discussing would be dealing with the muscle bundles. Then we have inside the muscle bundles, we have muscle fibers or the cells of the muscular tissue. You know, because muscle is a tissue in itself, it would have certain cells which would comprise the tissue. So muscle fibers are those tissues, those cells, pardon me, not tissue, the muscular tissue, I am repeating it again, muscular tissue comprises of the cells known as muscle fibers. Then we have inside those muscle fibers, myofibrils or myofilaments are present, and that muscle fibers functional unit happens to be sarcomere, in which the contraction or relaxation takes place. Now first of all, let's see what are muscle bundles all about. If you take a skeletal muscle and see in depth, the composition of the tissue can be understood from the point of view of muscle bundles. Each muscle bundle is known as fascicle. Okay, so each muscle fascicle is having many muscle fibers inside it. Supposedly, this is one of the muscles we are talking about. This entire muscle bundle would have many muscle fibers inside it, and of course there would be supply of blood capillaries inside it. These, if I am showing you cross section of a muscle, there would be such cells. Supposedly this happens to be a fascicle, this is the muscle bundle, there would be another muscle bundle that would be present. These fascicles are separated by a connective tissue layer known as fascia, which separates the fascicles. This is collagenous connective tissue present between adjacent muscle fibers, that is known as fascia. So each fascicle is separated by the presence of fascia between them, and these are muscular bundles. There would be supply of blood to this, because muscle contraction needs lot of oxygen and blood brings that supply. Now this single muscle unit, muscle fiber unit, is basically the cell of skeletal muscle, which is a tissue in itself. This is the entire tissue which is having the composition of muscular bundles. Each bundle is separated from other bundle by a connective tissue layer. Each bundle has muscle fibers. Now these muscle fibers are like spindle shaped fibers which are having many nuclei present inside them. When we have more than one nuclei present inside a cell, we term it as syncytium. So the muscle fiber is a syncytium with many nuclei present inside it. Now one thing you have to remember, when we talk about muscular cell, that is skeletal muscle cell, we use the word sarco. Now, like supposedly I am talking about fibers membrane, so I would use the term sarcolemma. That would be the plasma membrane of a muscle fiber. Okay, then inside the cytoplasmic content of the cell would be known as sarcoplasm. So the cytoplasm is termed as sarcoplasm. The nuclei would be termed as nuclei only, there wouldn't be any sarconuclei term. And then there is a lot of endoplasmic reticulum which is present, because there are many nuclei, there would be a lot of endoplasmic reticulums also associated with the nuclear membrane. So such endoplasmic reticulums are known as sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now, when we study the classification of muscles like red muscles and white muscles, we are going to deal with this sarcoplasmic reticulum. This plays an important role in the contraction of muscles. That's why we have specifically mentioned sarcoplasmic reticulum. And of course, these two were to be mentioned because they are important constituents of the cell. So, we have muscle fiber that is having a sarcolemma, sarcoplasm and sarcoplasmic reticulum, which would be responsible for its cellular activities. Apart from that, what is of our concern is that whenever we talk about skeletal muscle, our prime concern is contraction and relaxation that would bring about the movement, and that movement won't be brought about by any of these constituents that we have discussed. For that, we need to discuss another term that is known as myofibrils. Now, what are myofibrils? Myofibrils are myofilaments. They are adjacent filaments which run parallel to each other. They are having certain proteins inside it. They are running parallel to each other inside the cell itself. So, that parallel arrangement of the myofilaments is myofibrils enables the muscular cells to undergo contraction and relaxation. So, what are those filaments or what are those muscle fibers which form a myofibril? What are those proteins which are responsible for forming a myofibril? That those are, first one is actin and other one is myosin. Okay. These are important constituents of sarcomere, what happens to be the functional unit of a skeletal muscle. Now, this actin is forming a light band. Please remember, light band inside a sarcomere. This myosin forms a dark band. Now, inside a myofilament or myofibril, there is alternate arrangement of this light band and dark band which brings about the contraction of muscles. So, this light band is also known as isotropic, okay, and this one anisotropic. Other names: anisotropic band, isotropic band, light band, dark band. These are the names. And apart from this, this is thick band because the filaments happen to be thick, protein filaments I am talking about, and this is known as thin band. So, these are the names that you have to remember when I talk about actin and myosin. Now, we are going to study next is the structure of sarcomere. I hope I am quite clear with the structure of a muscular cell, that is a muscle fiber, what it is going to be comprising of. It is having a membrane, nuclei many because it is a syncytium. There is a sarcoplasmic reticulum, and inside these there would be fibers which would be present, and those fibers would be the fibers of these proteins, actin and myosin proteins. Now, you have to remember both of them are polymers. So, when we study the structure of these contractile proteins, we are going to see what are the monomers, what are the different monomers of each polymer, and how do they work, at physiological level, what is the mechanism, what is the actual mechanism that brings about contraction and relaxation. But before that, we have to see that what is the main structure that brings about contraction and relaxation. So, for that we jump to the term known as sarcomere. We will take sarcomere in next lesson. So, to end up this lesson, I am going to repeat what we have done till now. We did that inside a skeletal muscle there is a muscle bundle known as fascicle, which is separated from other fascicle by a collagenous layer known as fascia. Inside each muscle bundle there are numerous muscle fibers which happen to be the cells of the tissue. These muscle fibers, they have the typical cell arrangement, they have all the organelles which are present inside a typical animal cell, apart from the difference that they are named sarcoplasmic reticulum, sarcomere, sarcolemma, and there are present many nuclei inside it. And apart from that, there are proteins which are present, which are known as myofibrils in an adjacent attachment. Now, in the next lesson, we are going to study about sarcomere and its structure.